Cheryl Joachim. I represent Hopkins, Edina, and St. Louis Park, and I am the Education Finance Committee Chair. And today we will have the House Education Supplemental Finance Bill up on the floor. This bill builds on investments we made last session. It provides our school districts with flexibility and funds for innovation, puts more teachers in our schools, keeps more students in our classrooms, takes a comprehensive look at some of the larger investments we made last year, and brings more of our student voices to the Capitol. We do a lot with our $43 million one-time target, including investing over $37 million more into the READ Act. We spent a majority of those funds on the number one request we heard from our school administrators and teachers across the state, to pay teachers stipends for their training after school, or to pay substitute teachers if teachers are getting the training during school hours. Representative Heather Edelson will discuss the details of the increased flexibility we provide the schools as well. We also invest in getting more teachers in our classrooms with a special education teacher apprenticeship program, increased access to special education teacher pipeline dollars, and we use the base of Representative Norris's bill to create a student teacher stipend pilot project. Vice Chair Representative Mary Frances Clardy will be providing more details on that portion of the bill. And as many of you have already reported, student absenteeism is a large concern for our school districts and our families across the state. In this bill, we have a task force proposed by Representative Keeler and Representative Bakeberg that will take a deep dive into the data surrounding student absenteeism. Representative Sansamura will give the details of a 3-year pilot project program that provides 9 of our school districts across the state money to collaborate and innovate on ways to keep our students in the classroom. We also invest in the Minnesota Promise Fellows program, an AmeriCorps partnership that focuses on engagement and attendance of students grades 6 through 12. We also all know how important it is for our students to be civically engaged and to keep them at the center when we make decisions about their education. With that in mind, we invest both in the Minnesota Youth in Government program as well as the Minnesota Youth Council. And I'm sure you would agree with me after watching some of our students from across the state testify at the legislature and participate, our future is definitely in good hands. The bill also invests in task forces that will take a deep dive into 2 of the other areas we made big investments in last year, our students with special needs and our English language learners. Finally, there are also a variety of low-cost and no-cost provisions in this bill that provide our districts flexibility and clarity. I'm very proud of the work we did last year, from universal meals and the READ Act to cutting special education cross-subsidy in half, and especially indexing the school formula to inflation. This year, we have the opportunity to invest in our K-12 students once again, and I believe that we make efficient and effective use of those funds in this bill, and I look forward to the discussion on the floor today. I will now turn it over to Representative Edelson, who will briefly discuss our increased investments in the READ Act.
Thank you, Chair Joachim. Good afternoon. The READ Act was passed last year, and it was a historic investment in literacy for the state of Minnesota. This year, we took what we heard from feedback in terms of teachers, principals, superintendents on work that they really needed help with now. READ Act 2.0 addresses 10 specific things. It's the 2 primary ones that I want to really draw attention to are $31 million that invests for teacher stipends that the chair had mentioned. This will be flexible money that will go out tied to teachers and ensure that they are getting stipends, or we will be paying for substitute teachers to have the teachers do the training. It also takes the $35 million that was appropriated in the $92 million last year, and it will send that money out on a per pupil basis this year. It will be flexible in terms of funding and will be used like local literacy incentive aid in that same parameters. It will also, we moved the deadline. We have currently right now 26,000 teachers signed up. Let me just say that one more time. 26,000 Minnesota teachers are signed up to do READ Act, one of the 3 professional developments that are currently being offered. So these are phase 1 teachers. They are reading intervention teachers, classroom teachers that are K through 3, special education, and we also in this bill create a training for paraprofessionals and volunteers in our schools. As we know, the screener will be mandated to start next year so that every child will be screened to see where they are in terms of their literacy, and it will provide intervention. This will be a huge lift but we will also start to flag where kids need help. It's a big deal for Minnesota. It's a big deal for Minnesota kids, and it will help our schools tremendously. Just another thing, there has been some flags in terms of when we did the curriculum review. There were every single one of the literacy curriculums had some sort of cultural responsive flag. We want to make sure these materials are responsive to our diverse state. 40% of Minnesota students are diverse students, and we need diversity reflected in our literacy curriculum. That will help when we're teaching kids to read. So we will be starting a two-step process. We'll be appropriating $1 million for MDE will be doing an RFP where they will go and request an agency to go through and vet all of the materials that have been vetted and approved for structured literacy. So we have a two-step process where we look at structured literacy, and then we will look at cultural responsiveness. The READ Act this year will also just have a PELSB report, and I just want to say that will be wrapped up in 2027, so making sure higher education is working with our K through 12 schools. It is a comprehensive look at literacy again this year, and this work will continue, and I'm really happy that Mary Frances Clardy will be taking over the READ Act next year. Thank you. And I'll go ahead and pass it to Vice Chair Sensamura, excuse me, Representative Sensamura. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Samantha Sensamura, and I'm the state representative representing District 63A, South Minneapolis. So coming into the session, we were confronted with some alarming statistics that told us a story about student attendance. And what we learned was that many of our students are not in school. The rates of chronic absenteeism across our state are rising. Chronic absenteeism is defined as students missing 10 days or more a year. And we know that we passed so many transformational educational changes last year. We passed free breakfast and lunch for students. We passed ethnic studies for all to ensure that students will have a reflective and responsive curriculum. We passed really needed reading interventions and reading curriculum changes. But we know that if our students are not in school, they cannot access any of that. They cannot access any of the benefits of that transformational educational legislation from last year. So this session, we went to work talking to districts across the state about what are they seeing in terms of student absenteeism and what can we do to meet the moment to solve this problem. We heard that the reasons why a 5-year-old might not be in school are different from the reasons an 18-year-old might not be in school. We had really powerful testimony in our community, and I particularly wanted to highlight a student from Minneapolis, the district that I represent, who talked about their We Want You Back program. This was an older student who had been, out of the school system, and through the We Want You Back program, which reaches out to students through building relationships, through talking to them about what are some of the barriers that are preventing you from getting to school, was able to get the student back into the school system and help them graduate. So in this legislation, we are doing a demonstration project and giving demonstration grants to 9 districts across our state, urban districts, rural districts, suburban districts, to create innovative programming to deal with our attendance challenges. And our message to Minnesota students is really clear. We want you back. We want you back in the classroom. We want you back in the learning environments, and we're willing to do the work to get you back there. So that's the important work that we're doing around attendance. And now I want to pass it over to Vice Chair Clardy, who can talk about our student teacher stipends.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I am Representative Mary Frances Clardy. I am the Vice Chair of Ed Finance Committee. I've been teaching in St. Paul Public Schools for 28 years, and most recently I worked to help train and mentor our next generation of teachers that grow and thrive to become the best version of themselves in the classroom. But the journey, it's not easy for new educators. It's rigorous, it's demanding, it requires a lot of time. And our supplemental budget will help reduce that financial burden by creating a pilot program. And the pilot program will have $7,500 in stipends for student teachers, and it will be going to 7 Minnesota colleges and universities who place students in Minnesota this year in the 24-25 school year. And this is about strengthening the pipeline for qualified teachers and focusing on getting more teachers in the classroom. Data will be collected from the student teachers to see if the stipend actually helped and helped resist the barriers for them completing their teacher preparation program. Student teachers are learning to educate our future workforce, and they deserve economic security. We're supporting Minnesotans pursuing a career in teaching and making sure that all of them have the resources to stay afloat. And now I will open it up for any questions that you might have.
How would the stipend work? Would they spend it on living expenses, or where would it just be unrestricted so they can use it how they see fit?
So currently in the Office of Higher Ed, there is a stipend program based on need that's up to $7,500. Rarely do students make that full amount. This one, we were trying to see what we could do if K through 12 money would be more adequate. So we picked the colleges and universities. We talked to them to find out how many teachers they'll be placing next year, gave them enough money to pay for each one of their students. They're not going to be picking or choosing. People don't have to apply. It's up to $7,500, and the students can use it how they wish. We just want to see if that amount of money really does bring down some of those barriers. I am thinking of a student teacher that came who's the president of the Student Teachers Union, and I feel horrible, I'm forgetting her name right now, but she was telling us that one of her friends got that stipend. It still didn't cover what she was losing from her night job that she had to do, that she had to give up on. So these are students that are going to school, paying tuition, working to make that tuition work, and then being asked to give up their job for 12 weeks. So that's how it's just the flat amount. They'll get it upon completion or beforehand, and then we'll do the study. And our Professional Education Licensing Standards Board is the one that's going to conduct an academic study on that.
Is this within your target for this committee?
Yes, it is.
So the governor in theory would be good with it?
Yes. Actually, we put everything in our bill that the governor asked for, which were a lot of no-cost items and $2.7 million of an IT billing for the Professional Education Licensing Standards Board to get their online teacher application portfolio process up and going.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, any thoughts on the planned Republican amendment to reallocate some money from the state office building to help pay for some of the mandates that were enacted last year?
It's creative, and I keep hearing about these mandates. Mandate relief sounds great on a bumper sticker, but our kids deserve better than bumper sticker politics. We made serious investments last year, both in funding and the direction we want our state education system to go. Funding and policy go together. Laws are mandates. We cooperate with the stakeholders and all the outside groups, and that's what you see in this year, too, in this bill. Coming back, increasing the deadline, pushing back the deadline for the READ Act implementation, loosening up some money and providing flexibility there. One principal even came forward, and I have to thank Senator Kunish for giving me this bill, too. One teacher came forward and said, hey, universal meals is so popular, we don't have enough lunchroom tables. So can we dip into our nutrition surplus, which they can usually do for a variety of things if they have a surplus for 3 years running, and add lunchroom tables to that? So we did. So when they come to us with good ideas, we're more than happy to work with it. But just talking about a mandate holiday really does not do our students any service.
Can you talk a little bit more about the READ Act, pushing things back? How far are you pushing them back? What will that give principals, superintendents, teachers as they're trying to learn this new material, choose this huge process of getting trained, choosing curriculum? Can you outline that a little bit more?
Yes, thank you. So we moved it out a year. So it was going to be July 1st of 2025, and that was going to be challenging for all of the teachers to meet the Phase 1 teachers. So we've moved it out a year. We've also provided, and I forgot to highlight, one day where a school board, as well as in agreement with the teachers at their district, would be able to have one day that they would have just for training. So reduced instructional hours for just next year as well. So
we hear this both from our managers and members of the public. They want to know how, after a year of historic investments in public schools, funding from the legislature, why so many districts are struggling financially. And I know there's a lot to that. It's a complicated answer, but
How
what
many
would be your?
hours do we have? No. I could do a press conference all day on what we did for investments last year. So the thing is, and this is back when you and I met like 20 years ago, I was doing advocacy work around early childhood and family education because it saved my children from me and they were making cuts. I got involved in K through 12 advocacy and soon realized that there were huge underinvestments. And in the last 20 years, there have been 3 years where districts got a zero. And if you look at compounding interest, it's hard to climb out of that hole. So while we made historic investments last year, this session for the biennium, and indexed the formula to inflation with a 2% base, 3% cap, so they have some stability and can make efficient plans going forward, we only filled about a third of that hole. And I have been very clear every time I talk that we still have work to do. We have the underinvestment. Vice Chair Clardy and I were just with a group that represents 52 districts across the state, schools in equity for equity in education. And they said, thank you for this year's bill. Thank you. They want to do the work. They still need more funding. And I don't want people to forget that after we leave this session. There's still more work to do.
Another element we've heard about with that is declining enrollment has something to do with it. I mean, is that something that legislation can fix and can be addressed through the legislature?
I don't think we can legislate people having more babies, but it's partially that. And we've been looking at this demographic downward trend for as long as, the 10 years I've been at the Capitol and before. We actually are starting to get the net in-migration that we have are our younger families. So it looks different in every school district. And we'll have to wait and see. But I think part of declining enrollment is definitely affecting some school districts more than others.
Any more questions?
I think he handled the Republicans just announced they're going to try to add amendments to all the bills today to try to stop the state from making the first payment on the state office building and to try to divert money from that project to other things. So, and so you guys will be hearing that today.
Yes, we will. And I'm sure we'll continue to hear that. I'm sure everybody in the public will continue to hear that during an election cycle because after all, it's an election year and they'll put whatever they want on literature. What things people have to remember about the state office building is it's not just for those of us that work in the legislature. It also hosts the Legislative Library, Secretary of State's Elections Office, the GIS surveying that does the surveying across the state, the Legislative Coordinating Commission, all of the revisers for the entire state agencies that write all the bills. So it's more, and as Sergeant's Office for the House, nonpartisan staff for the House, all of that's over there. And even more importantly, and as somebody who used to be a Senate staffer that had to give out the little tickets for people to be in that room because there was never enough hearing space, our building's old. It has very little hearing space. The hearing space we have were built inside a courtyard. That's why you don't get reception there. Building's been struck by lightning in the 70s. It was almost blown up from the loading dock. It needs work. And we also need to expand the space for the public to come and make sure it's safe and accessible because it has horrible accessibility as well.
I wonder if you could talk just really generally about, going back to the question you answered earlier, many districts are struggling with many of the things that you mentioned, with a lot of the new legislation, which they're not opposed to, but struggling, for example, the READ Act to fulfill. What do you hope, with the budget that you were given, what do you hope people will see in this bill that you're putting forward? What are you excited about and proud of? And what do you hope, where do you hope it will go?
Thank you. I'm excited about building on the investments we did last year in the READ Act so we make sure that every student starts out on a path to success and graduation. I'm excited about getting more teachers in the classroom, keeping more of our students in the classroom, and really taking a deep dive into two of the areas of our education budget that we invested in last year, special education and EL, to make sure those dollars are working as they should be. This is a supplemental budget year. We had a really big budget last year with large tails to do that ongoing spending. In education, that ongoing spending is the most important piece. You don't want to drop a district off a cliff with one-time stuff. So that's why you have to be creative and thoughtful when you use that one-time spending. And I think we really did it efficiently this year.
On the expansion of the pre-K, it says 5,200 seats. Is this a grant-based system where the districts applied the
Yeah,
money to
and
expand?
we, at the very last minute, we had expanded the 5,200 seats starting in 26, 27 last year, but at the last minute, we put money in 25. Didn't have time to work it through the levy interactions, which you see in the tails now. So this was just distributing that money that we invested last year. So that 5,200 extra seats start in 26. Or 25, sorry.
But legislation doesn't dictate where the seats go. It's they
The
apply.
process, yeah, the process is there. That Chair Pinto knows much better than I do. It's just in our area because of the levy interactions. All right, thank you so much. Thank you.